meeting of the National Assembly for debating purposes only, in addition to the rules of debate. The virtual sessions will encompass all the rules of the National Assembly, as well as the rules that usually apply for debating purposes. Members enjoy the same powers and privileges that apply in a sitting of the National Assembly. Members should equally note that anything said in the platform is deemed to have been said to the House and may be ruled upon. All members who have logged in shall be considered to be present and are requested to mute their microphones and only unmute it when requested to speak. The microphones are very sensitive and will pick up noise, which might disturb the attention of other members. When recognized to speak, please unmute your microphone and connect your video. Members may make use of the icons on the bar at the bottom of their screens, which has an option that allows a member to put up his or her hand to raise a point of order. The Secretariat will assist in this regard. And when using the virtual system, members are urged to refrain or desist from unnecessary points of order or interjections. We shall now proceed to the order, which is debate on vote number 16, Basic Education Appropriation Bill. I now recognize the Honourable Minister of Basic Education. The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Chair, Cabinet colleagues, and Deputy Ministers present, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and honourable members. Chair, on behalf of the entire basic education sector, we wish to thank the National Assembly for inviting us to table our 2022-2023 budget on vote 16, basic education. Chair and honourable members, we must agree that making progress in basic education sector does require a continual focus on our long-term targets while we also address agencies as they arise. As we all know, the agency of epic proportions in the form of COVID-19 pandemic has consumed much time, energies, efforts, and financial resources since 2020. According to the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, the pandemic represents a worldwide generational catastrophe as children fall behind in their learning and experience a general trauma of disruptions. One of the traumas suffered by children has been the loss of their parents, their caregivers, teachers from COVID-19. As a sector, through our monitoring, we can confirm that we lost 3,300 educators, which constitute a percentage of our workforce. And we continue to pay tribute to the educators, as well as the education executives and management leaders who lost their lives during COVID-19. Speaker and honorable members, we in the basic education sector must thank our partners from teacher unions, national governance associations, civic society, and the public for really assisting us to make sure that indeed we continue to keep our schools open. The sector worked very hard to minimize the detrimental effects of the pandemic while accepting that the damage done is so deep that there can be no quick fixes and recovery will definitely take time. Chair and honorable members, just allow me to highlight the following in relation to budget vote 16 on basic education. Our overall budget for 2022 is 29.6 billion, which is an increase of 4.9%. And breaking it down, we were allocated 535 million for administration, which is 1.9% increment. For curriculum support and monitoring, we were allocated 3.3 billion, which is a decrease of 2.5%. On teacher education, human resources, and institutional development, we received 1.5 billion, which is an increase of 3.5% from the previous allocation. For planning, information, and assessment, we've been allocated 15.4 billion, which is an increase of 4.6% from previous allocations. For educational enrichment services, we've been allocated 8.8 billion, which is an increase of 4.4%. And the overall allocation to conditional grants is 23 billion, which is an increase of 10%. For math, science, and technology, we've been allocated 424.8 million, which is an increase of 2.8%. For infrastructure, we've been allocated 12.4 billion, which continues to be funded through education infrastructure grant, which is an increase of 5.6 million and 5.6%, and we have been allocated 2.4 billion for ASIDI. For HIV and AIDS, whose purpose is to support South Africa's HIV and TB prevention strategy, has been allocated 242.2 million, which is an increase of 0.2%. For National School Nutrition Program, we have been allocated 8.5 billion, which is an increase of 4.6%. But as a sector also, we've been allocated 255.5 million, which is an increase of 5.2% for learners with severe and profound intellectual disabilities. And the department, after the function shift from social development to basic education, received 1.2 billion. There are also earmarked funds that have been allocated to the sector for different activities associated with the department. We've been given 2.9 billion for transfers to different agencies. For instance, for Funza Lusaka, we've been given 1.3 billion, which is 1.6% increment. But we've also been given money which we have to distribute to other agencies that do work with ECD, with the ECD program. So we have 1.1 million from the Daise, we have 2.1 for Uhambo Foundation, we have 826,000 for the South African Congress of ECD. Umalusi, which is responsible for examinations, has been given 162 million, which is an increment of 2.9%. For senior certificate examination programs, and also for what we call the second chance program, we have been allocated 58.2 million, which is an increase of 0.6%. Our partner, the National Education Collaboration Trust, has been allocated 120 million, which is an increase of 2.6%. For workbooks, including workbooks for visually impaired learners, it has been allocated 1.1 billion, which is an increase of 0.8%. And for the South African for SAIS, we have allocated 15.5 million for a contribution to SAIS, which is a decrease from previous allocation of 15.8%. Treasury also allocated us money for early grade reading assessment. We have been given 11.1 million, which is an increase of 11.6%. For information communication technologies, we've been allocated 14.2%, which is an increase of 27.6%. Chair, our sector has successfully implemented what we call a mass employment intervention program through the Presidential Youth Employment Initiative, contributing significantly towards poverty alleviation, addressing past balances, but in the main also assisting us to try and claw back and deal with some of the problems that continue to bedevil the sector. Between last year, from December 2020 to date, we have been able to create more than 596 job opportunities for young people in different areas, and we allocated a budget of 13 billion. Chair, I also want to remind this House of some of our strategic areas so that we also adjust on what we said we'll be doing. Our 6 priorities to remind the House is that we are committing ourselves to continue to lay a solid foundation for quality and an efficient education system, as well as providing also for skills of the future. We're committed ourselves to a number of activities which are supported by different documents, our constitution, the NDP, our international commitments, in creating, in pursuing our moral imperative and a mandate for government to make social justice principles such as access, redress, equity, efficiency, inclusivity, and quality to be widely available to all our citizens. Chair, I also did request our researchers to give us some sense of where the impact of COVID-19 on our basic education system. And I'll reflect on this later. But the researchers agree that at the heart of our sector is learning, And at the heart of learning is improving reading in the early grades. They report that before COVID-19, we had seen great progress in the sector. According to PILS, which we participated in 2016, and also between 2011 and 2016, South Africa had seen the second largest improvement amongst all PILS learners participating after Morocco. According to Professor Martin Gustafson, the research that they had conducted suggests that by the end of 2021, the average grade 4 learner could read at the level of grade 3, meaning that we had slid backwards in terms of our programs, and these losses, we are told, are similar to what has been witnessed around the world. But given these losses and despite the best efforts in terms of our schools, we do not expect the PILS 2021 to give us better results, but will welcome any improvement. So, Chair, in previous debates, I'd made reference to a systemic evaluation, which will supplement the international monitoring and learning below grade 12. And the results of the 2021 systemic evaluation in grade 3, 6, and 9 will be announced next year in February 2023. But a key question is, what were the effects of the pandemic on learners dropping out of school? Because also that was highly reported and really took lots of attention from the media, but also from the sector. After initial conflicting reports, there is now agreement that the initial evidence which suggested that some 500,000 children did not return to school when they should have was not correct. This received media coverage in the middle of last year, but the evidence we have now is saying that is not true. The problem that occurred, Chair, is that in grade RN1, parents delayed sending their kids to school out of the fear of COVID-19. Chair, I've lost connectivity. Am I still audible, Chair, because I've lost connectivity?
Yes, now you are still audible, Honourable Minister. You may continue.
Okay. Chair, as I say, we did make public our information, and we will be giving reports quite soon about the facts and the retention rates after COVID. MTF, Chair, requires us to pay also attention to expanding participation of our learners in subjects in grade 10 and 12. It refers to niche subjects, and hence we've made lots of progress. And to illustrate that, between 2015 and 2021, the number of Black, African, and colored learners in grade 12 candidates enrolled for these important technical subjects as engineering, graphics, and design have increased by 50%. We've moved from 19,000 learners in these areas amongst these two population groups to about 29,000. But one way we're also ensuring that young people leave the school system with knowledge and skills, we've also reported that we will be implementing what we call General Education Certificate at the age of grade 9. So the General Education Certificate is currently being piloted in 268 schools, and by 2023, we would have piloted it in the 75 districts that we have. As indicated, Chair, we continue to be committed in ensuring that our children receive books on time, they get nutritional meal, they get psychosocial support, they get ICTs that they need to enable them to participate in the fourth industrial revolution, but also our teachers continue to receive attention. It is clear that all public servants also, Chair, need to be accountable within the accountability system that are clearly defined and fair. We have the required policy frameworks in place, including the quality management system signed by the employer and all unions in 2019. And the provisions in the South African Schools Act around academic improvements pledge each school that should be achieved. We have also extensive monitoring and school-based assessment through our data-driven district partnerships, which reaches about 15,000 schools. So, Chair, I want again to say, I have reminded this House about our 6 priorities. I'll only speak to 2 because of fear of that I won't be able to cover all of them. I'll only focus on the ECD and skills of the future. I can confirm, Chair, to the House and the public that the Minister of Social Development and myself, supported by our respective departments, did respond with haste and purpose to the clarion call made by His Excellency President Ramaphosa when he directed us in 2020 during his State of the Nation address that there must be a function shift of ECD from social development to education. And I can report that this has happened seamlessly. And on the 1st of April this year, we did receive the function, and thanks to Minister Zulu and her team. We are now in the process of crafting and implementing innovative strategies to strengthen the foundations of learning, looking at a continuum from birth to early grades in the foundation and intermediate phases, a service delivery model which proposes the following strategies for improving ECD, quality in ECD have also been developed. That there will be a curriculum-based early learning for all children from birth to 5 years, ECD programs for all children from birth to 5 years, training, education, and development of those working in the sector, coordination of all ECD services in the country, and developing a flexible funding and provisioning framework for ECD. And in anticipation of that, we've worked with different partners. We've worked with the World Bank and National Treasury and the Department of to implement public expenditure review framework. We have also conducted a baseline study, which was conducted in cooperation with the First National Bank, Innovation Aid, EDGE, USAID, and ECD measure to assess the quality of ECD programs in a nationally representative sample. And this baseline study was launched in public on the 8th of April this year, and it will be used on an ongoing basis to monitor the developments in the sector. Again, Chair, we also have conducted what we call the National Census of Early Learning Programs, which was conducted in 41,000 ECD programs in collaboration with the Legal Foundation. And the data which has been collected from this census will be used to map up all early learning programs in order to understand the full size and shape of the ECD sector and to develop a national master list of ECD programs, which will be incorporated into the Education Management Information System. Chair, I must confirm that DBE exposition I've just given on the ramping up of ECD and its relocation to DBE took into account the different resolutions and advices that were given to us. Again, Chair, I want to also report that last year I did report that the coding and the robotic curriculums for grade 3, from grade R to 3 and 7, and the caps for occupational subjects for grade 8 and 9, they have been developed, they've been submitted to Umalusi for appraisal and quality assurance. And I can report, Chair, that this appraisal and quality assurance process is ongoing, including the appraisal of public comments that we have received as a sector. I also had reported earlier that we are introducing a number of new FET level subjects. For instance, this year we can report that the first cohort of learners taking marine studies will sit for the first NEC subject, which includes marine sciences. And Chair, we're very excited and encouraged by all these developments. We're also continuing expanding the establishment of focus schools to cater for learners with special talents and aptitudes across a wide range of scholastic endeavors. These schools constitute a legislative distinct category of public schools that offer a specialized curriculum orientated towards 11 learning fields, which include agriculture, maritime and nautical studies, sciences, mathematics, science and technology, technical occupational disciplines such as electrical and civil and mechanical technologies. In addition to our detailed progress report we gave last year, we can further report that 35 occupational and vocational oriented subjects have been gazetted for public comment. And the gazetting was followed in 2021 by the submission of these subjects again to Umalusi for appraisal and quality assurance. Public comments have been received and the infusion in the caps is taking place. We have developed all the working materials. In March this year, Chair, training manuals were also developed in preparation for the training of subject advisors and teachers in occupational and vocational oriented subjects. During 2021, a costed business plan was released to the EU budget for 3-stream curriculum. It was approved by the National Treasury, and the release of tranches has taken place. And this has has had a significant input and progress in helping us unlock key activities of the master plan for the 3-stream curriculum. Once again, Chair, I want to encourage honorable members and the public to also go and study the resolutions that we've had from the different makutas, and unfortunately, I won't be able to share them with them, and we really humbly request that they visit our sites, which are quite rich and very informative. And again, Chair, last time we did report on the process that you can recall that we had established an interministerial committee on the development of history for grade 4 to 12. It has been developed, and the content framework has been done for grade 4 to 12, including the review of certain critical topics. The task team that was tasked with this responsibility is currently engaged in a dedicated writing process to sequence and package the identified content and to ensure an alignment in terms of articulation, sequencing, progression, and conceptual development. Again, Chair, if you remember, we also reported about the work that we'll be doing in ensuring that there's incremental introduction of African languages. And indeed, we've already implemented that in 2,584 schools. We also strategically decided to expand the list of South African languages by offering a second additional language in our curriculum. And this additional language is Khoi, Nama, and San languages, as well as South African Sound. Again, Chair, if I have I can see the Chair switching on the camera. I'm feeling quite intimidated. So I'll move to the conclusion, Chair, that we are making progress also in Kiswahili. And if it was not of COVID, we would have started to roll out. We have an MOU with Kenya and Tanzania, and I'll be going to Tanzania to finalize the MOU. So I really want to conclude, sir, by finally wishing to thank all our partners in the sector, the sister departments that work with us, the business sector, and also the different partners that have made our work easier. I wish to single out SAIS, Umalusi, NECT, our teacher unions, the National SGB Association, and the Principal Association, and also want to thank Chair, the Deputy Speaker, and more important, the committees, both from the NCOP and the National Assembly, which have really been guiding us. And I think I will be failing if I don't thank my Deputy, Dr. Regina Muhaule, who's been extremely helpful and supportive in making sure that as a sector we move together with all the necessary commitment and speed. So I want to thank you very much, Chair, before it's talking. Thank you very much, Chair.
No, thank you, Honourable Minister. It was certainly not to intimidate you. It was just a gentle reminder that your time is running out.
No, accepted, Chair.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Minister. The next speaker is the Honourable Bingo Gigaba.
Thank you very much, Chair. Let us greet the Minister, the Deputy Minister, the members of the committee, and everybody that has joined virtually. Chair, the ANC is a liberation movement, and its policy positions and programs seeks to address the shackles of oppression, underdevelopment, and poverty. In this journey of liberation, we place all our efforts in enabling the people of South Africa to be their own liberators. The people of our nation cannot be their own liberators without being empowered with the knowledge and resources to do so. This is the basis of placing education as an apex priority in our quest to address the injustices of the past. Learning is a continuous process we all experience from birth to death. It is therefore important that we understand educational learning, recognizing the fact that all humans have the capacity and capability to learn. The cognitive development of children and the early childhood development phase has a significant impact on the capacity of children to learn. Researchers have alluded that, and I quote, "Children are born to learn, they have fast, flexible, and are able to generalize their learning to new situations far more effectively than the smartest products of contemporary computer science." And I close quote. Honourable Chair, the level of inequality in our country has an adverse impact on children. The inequalities of different early childhood development centers impacts the most vulnerable in our society. The fact that children from privileged families have access to ECDs with facilities which enhance their cognitive development as an early age lays a solid foundation for schooling. The opposite is true for children who attend ECDs late and children in ECDs without adequate facilities and lack of trained practitioners. This is a stark reality of some of the drivers which perpetuate inequality in our society. Researchers has demonstrated that the learning outcomes of our education system is not equal to the expenditure incurred. The ability of learners to read and write by the age of 10 is relative. In order to improve learning outcomes of a foundational level, the ANC in its 54th National Conference resolved on the migration of the mandate of the provision of early childhood development from the Department of Social Development to the Department of Basic Education. This is an important strategic policy shift which was realized in April 2022, as ECDs are now a mandate of the Department of Basic Education. We applaud the two departments for realizing this objective. The critical aspect of the migration is to locate ECDs within the integrated basic education system and to strengthen learning outcomes of children provided by the Education Competent Department. Chair, the World Bank last week published a research report on quality early learning focusing on nurturing children's potential. And in that report, it noted critical factors we need to consider in ensuring expansion of ECDs with quality, and it recognized that, and I quote, overly ambitious targets risk compromising quality, resulting in negligible or even detrimental effects on learning. Quality can be harder to achieve at scale and often decreases as systems expand. Standards may be harder to uphold, or systems may struggle to secure the workforce need to meet growing service provisions. Quote closed. It will be important for the department to consider developing strong quality assurance systems and to support many disadvantaged communities to have ECDs which meet the required minimum norms and standards. Chair, this budget provides for the Early Childhood Development Grant, which supports ECDs with 1.2 billion for ECD subsidies to provide for and increase the number of children accessing subsidized ECD services. This budget allocation is not sufficient in addressing the systemic challenges affecting ECDs. But it will go a long way in expanding access. We have called on government to increase its budget allocation for ECDs as they require significant resources, which will contribute to improving learning outcomes in our basic education system, which will offset certain costs in the future, as the upcoming crop will have enhanced learning outcomes. Chair, another critical aspect of the ECD intervention should be to empower parents to make decisions about their children's early learning, and it helps them improve the quality of their parenting practices and interactions at home, and increase parental involvement with the formal learning environment. Chair, and the people of the country, the committee has published an invitation to the stakeholders and interested individuals to submit written comments on the Basic Education Laws Amendment Bill, which will close on the 15th of June. The bill responds to various challenges affecting our education system, such as additional regulatory powers to the minister to enable intervention, ensuring grade R is compulsory, placing accountability on school leadership to trace and report learners who have dropped out. The Bella Bill addresses numerous issues, and the ANC, and as the ANC, we call on the people of the country and stakeholders to make submissions to support and make inputs on this transformational bill, which will enhance our basic education system. We will later in the year undertake public hearings across the length and breadth of our nation, and we urge South Africans to join the debate on the Bella Bill and to raise their voices to influence and shape the future trajectory of our basic education system. In order to align our basic education system with our social and economic needs, we need to continuously assess whether the curriculum contributes to the holistic social, political, and economic imperatives. The piloting of coding and robotics is a critical program in order to mainstream the subjects. The world is fast changing, and we need to prepare our children for the changing world and to also prepare them not only to be recipient of technological developments, but in the future, our learners should be part of disruptive technological innovators. For the current financial year, the budget has allocated funds to provide 485 schools, including those in the coding and robotics pilot projects, with subject-specific computer hardware and related software in accordance with the minimum specifications prescribed by the curriculum assessment policy statement. The coronavirus pandemic has taught us that ICT facilities and digital devices in our schools and for learners are not a luxury, but a critical necessity to enhance teaching and learning. While the learners of the poor struggled to continue to learn during the lockdown and due to their inability to access digital platforms, which have different learning resources, learners who are from better families with access to ICT devices were able to continue to learn and access the digital platforms provided by the department, working with private companies to enable continuous learning. Through this budget, we urge the department to continue strengthening its relationship with the various stakeholders in the sector. The department should continue to empower school governing bodies to be functional and to have the capacity to provide the required leadership support for our schools. Our communities should also support our schools and take reasonable measures to ensure that our schools are free of alcohol use and drug, which have crippled into some of our schools. We need to preserve our schools as spaces of teaching and learning to harness the best qualities, values, and principles as enshrined in our Constitution. The ANC is supporting Vote 16 of the Department of Basic Education. We are supporting the vote, Chairperson, because it is responding to our basic education system needs. As the ANC, we will continue to play oversight role and ensure accountability in the sector to ensure all learners receive quality education. We support the vote because it will support steering our education system to improve learning outcomes through strengthening early childhood development. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Nodada.
Thank you so much, Chair. Can I please check if I'm audible before I start, Chair?
Yes, you are audible, Honourable Member.
Chairperson, as we debate the basic education budget vote, we must comprehend that quality education is a key tool to realize opportunity, one which our children can use to end poverty and unemployment, despite one's circumstances of birth. Chairperson, terrible damage has been caused to our children's education through the disruptions to their schooling over the last 2 years, where rural and township schools have lost up to 75% of their learning and teaching time. Rotational schooling mostly affected the poorest and most vulnerable of schools. It took the DA going to court to end rotational schooling, despite the Ministerial Advisory Committee recommending that it be abandoned. Minister, I hope it won't take us going to court again to lift the mask wearing for school children, while science and health experts have advised government to abandon it. What is more concerning, though, are the systematic tests done by the Western Cape Education Department, which shows that overall, learners have fallen up to 70% behind previous cohorts in language and up to 106% of a year behind in maths. The greatest learning losses can be seen in the foundation phase on reading, writing, language, and numeracy. Allowing these gaps to persist will widen the gap between learners who have access to well-resourced schools and those who do not. That is why in this budget vote, we have recommended that DBE consider extra interventions within its plans and targets for catch-up programs, specifically in the disadvantaged schools. I do want to, however, commend the diversification of learning pathways through the 3-stream curriculum model, a step in the right direction, Minister, in developing knowledge and skills for learners to access industry, jobs, and entrepreneurial opportunities. However, I would like to suggest that DBE considers more subjects and skills beyond coding, robotics, and marine studies. Developing skills and expertise to refine gold, diamond, and platinum is an opportunity DBE should explore in the curriculum and must be followed by our institutions of higher learning. Further, ensure you gazette the School of Skills curriculum with the NQF levels monitored by Umalusi. Secondly, engage with private sector and NGOs to establish collaboration schools as part of the department's targets. Collaboration schools seek to partner with underperforming schools serving marginalized communities with a school operating partner to strengthen school governance and improve quality teaching so all learners can reach their full potential. I offer an invite to the department to come see what collaboration schools have done in providing quality education for children in Bonneville. Quality education is pertinently made possible by quality teaching and development. Currently, we have over 1,500 unqualified teachers and over 24,000 teacher vacancies. The department must allocate resources to train and reskill teachers to ensure that they are qualified and aligning their knowledge to the three-stream curriculum model. It is essential to fill crucial vacancies by developing adequate quality teachers in math, science, and technology through the Funza Lushaka bursary, while prohibiting recipients from changing their study subjects once admitted at university. The low uptake in MST subjects, though, especially in top-performing provinces, is completely unacceptable, and the department must address this. Furthermore, it has become imperative that DBE establish an independent school monitoring evaluation authority to strengthen quality education. The recent floods in KZN and Eastern Cape have exacerbated the infrastructure challenges in the schooling system, with 630 schools damaged, costing the department 442 million to fix. Yet 1.6 billion has been cut from the infrastructure budget by Cabinet over the medium term, which has already affected existing infrastructural backlogs of dealing with mud schools, dilapidated asbestos, and pit toilet. Despite the Safe and ACD programs, which have recorded very low spending, we still sit with over 900 inappropriate structures and 1,526 schools with pit toilets. The President's Social Infrastructure Delivery Mechanism announced at SONA is mentioned nowhere in the APPN budget, which is concerning. It is crucial, therefore, to cite the model that will be used with this social infrastructure delivery mechanism to urgently address infrastructure backlogs in schools and the poor delivery by implementing agents. Learner dropouts remain a huge challenge. Before the pandemic, at least 4 out of 10 learners in South Africa who started school did not finish. Each young person that drops out of school adds to the deepening poverty, unemployment, and inequality, adding to the 3.3 million youth not in education, employment, or training. The digital recording of dropouts in SA SAMs is badly designed for tracking dropouts, and schools without access to ICT battle to capture learner information. It is unclear whether learners who drop out have permanently done so, have moved to new schools or TVET colleges. These unknowns are precisely the factors obscuring the disappearance of the learners. LURITS was instituted to address these data collection issues. Unfortunately, LURITS remains wrought with gaps and inaccuracies in terms of how information is collected at schools. Minister, to avoid speculation around the over 500,000 learners dropouts, it's time the department review SA SAMs and LURITS to ensure that we track, trace, and retain learners. Chairperson, the largest obstacle to redressing the legacies of the past and creating a society of opportunity is by repairing our failing education system. The DA believes that education is the foundation of opportunity. Where we govern, more children stay in school. Infrastructure is built and maintained despite budget cuts. Quality teaching is monitored through the Schools Evaluation Authority. More collaboration schools are built to harness skills needed for the economy, and that's why parents move with their children looking for better schooling. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the now former Western Cape MEC for Education, Debbie Schaefer, who's outgoing, for her work in providing learners with good quality education and a fair chance at accessing opportunity, regardless of whether a child was born in Khayelitsha, Mitchell's Plain, Bonneville, or Wynberg. It would be amiss of me not to mention that the DA will in the coming days submit our comments on the Basic Education Laws Amendment Bill, and we encourage South Africans to do so as well. The Bella Bill takes the decision of final admission away from governing bodies, removes the power of schools' language policies, and the bill is missing an opportunity to effectively regulate online and blended learning to alleviate the pressure on physical schooling. Minister, a country that does not adequately invest in its youth through quality education confines generations to a lifetime of poverty. In this budget vote, I plead with you that you wear your political maturity hat and consider our best practice recommendations as the custodian of our education. Our children surely deserve better. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Tembe Kwayo.
Chairperson, the EFF rejects budget vote 16 on basic education. As we speak today, Black learners of Good Hope Seminary School in Cape Town are engaged in a protest action against the racist conduct of teachers at that school. who regularly call them baboons and unworthy kafirs. This is on the back of many such actions across the country, including reported racism at schools privately owned by the Anglican Church. It should never be a surprise, therefore, when young people grow up with this racist attitudes, as seen at Stellenbosch University recently. Our basic education institutions are breeding and promoting this racism, and the department has not done anything to intervene and radically change this rot at our schools. If we still have schools named after Jan van Riebeeck here in Cape Town, there's not a chance of ever fighting this disease in the society. This attitude in the Western Cape is deeply embedded even at the level of political and departmental management of schools. It is for this reason that all of us must condemn the decision of the Western Cape Education Department to constructively dismiss Mr. Wesley Newman, the principal of Heathfield High School, who refused to open the school without protective clothing at the height of the first wave of the coronavirus pandemic. The DA in the Western Cape never fails to show their complete disregard for the colored people and is not compromising a career of an outstanding teacher who stood up for his learners and his colleagues. Mr. Newman must be reinstated back to his position immediately. Chairperson, the tragedy of our basic education lies in the fact that year in and year out, we stand here to lament about the same failures, and the department does absolutely nothing to address these failures. We have repeatedly lamented the fact that the department has no strategy of retaining learners at schools until they complete their matric. Each and every core group that has entered grade 1 in this country over the past 20 years, 50% of it is lost to the schooling system by the time they reach grade 12. These young people drop out for reasons that are still not known to the basic education department to this day because they never bothered to find out. The obsession with the matric pass rate, therefore, is convenient copped out to hide this failure of the system to educate our children. The Basic Education Laws Amendment Bill may assist in terms on ensuring that principals are held accountable for any child who drops out of school. But this is surely not enough, and it ought never to be the responsibility of principals alone. This is a societal problem. As if that was not enough, the department is lagging far behind in developing infrastructure for schools as laid out in their own norms and standards for school infrastructure. The norms and standards had stipulated that 2016, there ought to be no school in the country that had no adequate sanitation services, no libraries, and that no children should ever be learning under trees or under classrooms with asbestos roofs. Today, hundreds of schools in the Eastern Cape, Limpopo, the Northwest, and KwaZulu-Natal are still experiencing the same problems. Hundreds of children will have to cross dangerous rivers to get to school, and many more do not have access to school feeding schemes. Thousands of children in these very same provinces are taught by unqualified teachers, while the department has been dragging its feet in paying assistant teachers who have been keeping the lights on our education system. Earlier this year, it had to take the Grahamstown High Court to order the Eastern Cape Department of Education to deliver textbooks to schools in that province. Minister, perhaps it is time to revise the legislative framework that gives provinces too much power in that administration of schools. We need a national standard that all provinces must adhere to. Therefore, we reject this budget. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Nobo.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. It is widely known that the COVID-19 pandemic exacted a heavy toll on the basic education sector in South Africa. We lost educators, we lost support staff and learners during the past 2 years, and we would like to take a moment to remember them. May their souls rest in peace. In addition to this, the business of teaching was severe, particularly in under-resourced schools and communities where educators and learners did not have access to online tools to continue teaching and learning. The report reflects these realities and the massive inequalities that prevail in this sector, informing us that, I quote, in historically disadvantaged schools, around 70% of a year's worth of learning was lost in 2020, close quote. How are young people who have only had access to 30% of schoolwork supposed to progress and be expected to write and pass the same exams as their more advantaged counterparts? As the IFP, we are in agreement with the priorities listed in the report as approved by the Council of Education Ministers, but we are concerned about the realization of these goals. For an example, they call for, quote, immediate implementation of a curriculum with skills and competencies for a changing world in all public schools, close quote. Listing the fourth industrial revolution. Will a child that has only received 30% schooling on the current curriculum be equipped to meaningfully engage with this proposed new and more complex curriculum? We further feel that there should be a greater focus on literacy. According to Progress in International Reading Literacy Study 2016, a shocking 78% of grade 4 children cannot read for meaning in any language. Further, Professor Nick Spall, an education economist at Stellenbosch University and the secretary of 2030 Reading Panel, revealed that, I quote, the current trajectory indicates that it will be in 1998 before all the country's grade 4 children can read for meaning. Based on these terrifying statistics, it seems that as far as monitoring goes, the Department of Basic Education's goal relating to the number of schools monitored on the implementation of the reading norms is unacceptably low. The report reveals that the department's target is set at 18 schools. According to the international research organization Statista, I quote, as of 2019, the total number of schools in South Africa amounted to nearly 25,000. How can 18 out of 25,000 be a reasonable sample size? When it comes to school infrastructure, the annual targets are also worryingly low. For an example, the department's target for providing sanitation facilities is set at 450 schools per year. According to a July 2021 South African Human Rights Commission report, I quote, in KwaZulu-Natal, 349,826 learners and 12,978 teachers are at 983 schools, which are reliant on pit toilets. This is one province out of 9. This means that there are thousands of other schools that also rely on pit latrines. As the IFP, we want to appeal to the Department of Basic Education to get back to basics. We need to get our learners reading with understanding in schools that are fit for purpose, with proper water, sanitation, and other infrastructure. We further take note of the support, we further take note of and support the committee's recommendations. The IFP supports the budget vote. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Boshoff.
Honourable House Chair, I am tempted to dedicate my whole speech to Northern Cape Rural School, but I will refer to it only in passing. The reason is that implementation is a provincial function and we are busy with the national department. So, in passing, this is a primary school in a small town. Many of its pupils' only good meal is supplied by the school's feeding scheme. However, supply was terminated as an account of around 100,000 rand was not paid. 3 teachers took it on themselves to collect donations and continue with the meals. Buildings of that school are dilapidated. Construction of new buildings at a cost of 100 million rand had commenced during 2021. At present, 1 wall is completed. Had it not been for teachers who enter the profession as a vocation more than a job, had it not been for communities who take ownership of their schools, education would have been in much worse shape today. Honor to them. Waarin ek wel vandag se toespraak wil toewy is die wysigingswetsontwerp vir basiese onderwyswette, algemeen bekend as die Bella Bill. Hierdie wet is verouderd voor dit nog wet is. It has been introduced in 2017 before the lockdown changed the face of education in South Africa and globally. The genie is out of the bottle, but we consider a bill which assumes it is inside. Actually, we need a law which regulates education in all its different guises, and then another one to regulate schools which we knew as the kind of schools which we knew as the only mode of education. Dit is 'n probleem, maar nie die hele probleem nie. Die probleem wat ons in die oë moet kyk, is dat die skikking van 1994 een van die hoekstene daarvan op die spel is. Kom ons kyk gou na daardie skikking. Teen 1999 kon die Sowjetunie die ANC nie meer steun nie en die Weste was regtig moeg vir die nasionale party se minderheidsregering. 'n Lae-intensiteit burgeroorlog kon nog lank voortgaan. Die staatsmagte kon nie verslaan word nie, maar die bevrydingsbewegings kon ook nie onderdruk word nie. Wat die twee groepe van 'n skikking wou hê, was so ver van mekaar dat dit dikwels onmoontlik gelyk het. Die ANC moes uiteindelik nasionalisering van banke, grond en myne prysgee. Die ou regering se aandrang op groepregte, maar alles kon nog op onderwys vasval. Die regering sou hierdie skikking nie aan sy magsbasis verkoop kry, as skole sou lyk soos die ANC dit wou hê nie. Daar sien ons die begin van die huidige president se long game, sy strategie om die padda stadig te kook. Hy sou doen wat nodig is om die regering oor te neem, want as jy eers die regering in jou hande het, palm jy die res wel mettertyd in. Gemeenskappe kon maar self hulle skole bedryf. Die Suid-Afrikaanse skolewet van 1996 was dus 'n hoeksteen van die destydse skikking, nes private grondbesit. Hierdie wet het skoolbeheerliggame in die lewe geroep wat beleid vir toegang, godsdienstbeoefening, medium van onderrig en gedragskode kan bepaal. Skoolgeld kan ook gehef word om die staatssubsidie aan te vul en onderwysstandaarde te handhaaf of selfs te verhoog. In werklikheid is die ou regering se onderhandelaars weer wol oor die oë getrek, want die departement sou oor kurrikulum besluit. Afrikaanse skole sou dus dieselfde lyk en dieselfde klink, maar die inhoud sou 'n eensydige ANC geïnspireerde weergawe van die werklikheid wees. Nietemin, die plan het gewerk en talle gemeenskappe het self gedoen wat 'n mislukkende departement van onderwys nie kan doen nie: gehalte onderrig. Die Vryheidsfront, later die Vryheidsfront Plus, het deurlopend daarop aangedring dat gemeenskapsautonomie, selfbeskikking of enige woord wat mens wil gebruik, deel van die konstitusionele bedeling moet wees. Gewone wette kan herroep word of verander word om die tirannie van die meerderheid te bevestig. Dit is wat met die Bella Bill gebeur. Deurslaggewende bevoegdhede word van skoolbeheerliggame na provinsiale departementshoofde verskuif. Departemente wat nie skoolvoedingsskema in stand kan hou of skole gebou kry nie, moet hierdie funksies van skoolbeheerliggame wat dit uitmuntend verrig oorneem. Dit gaan nie oor skole nie. Die ANC, onder druk van die EFF, wil die skikking van 1994 verbreek. My vraag aan die paddas is dit nou duidelik genoeg dat hier 'n vuur onder die pot is? Baie dankie.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Census.
Thank you, Chair. I want to thank the Minister and congratulate the department and some of the provincial education departments for beginning to work with home educators to conduct research into home education. I am informed by home education that has told me about this positive development. Research is essential to innovation, and having only 5.5 million and 7 staff allocated for research, which were the figures given to me in committee, is insufficient to provide guidance to a department with a budget of over 29 billion. It is a strategic weakness to have to rely on academics outside of the department for research. These academics, quite understandably, have their own research interests that are not necessarily the areas on which the department needs to conduct research. Urgent research is needed into rural education. The closure of rural schools represents a significant waste of the historical capital expenditure of the department. We have no guarantee that the current capital expenditures will not also be wasted. Innovative solutions needs to be developed with rural communities to save rural schools and stop this waste of taxpayers' money. In the SONA, the President called for efforts to revive the economy and to cut red tape. This budget does not treat the education sector as one that can make significant contribution to the economy. South Africa is well positioned to provide educational services to the rest of Africa and beyond. We are once again struggling with load shedding. Education services do not require large amounts of energy. Why are we not encouraging the sector? Not only are we not encouraging educational entrepreneurship, we are actively discouraging it through excessive red tape. It takes years for independent schools to obtain registration, and there is a significant degree of duplication between the registration requirements of the provincial education departments and Umalusi. The President spoke eloquently of the need to encourage small entrepreneurs by cutting red tape. I am calling on Umalusi, the DBE, and the provincial education departments to cut registration red tape for independent educational institutions. Umalusi needs to provide 100% rebate on fees for all educational institutions with less than 30 students. All institutions catering to learners with special educational needs and all low-fee independent schools. Our Constitution makes clear in Section 29(4) that the state is not precluded from subsidizing independent educational institutions. The state has to start looking at innovative solutions that involve all sectors of society. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Deputy Minister of Basic Education. The Honourable Deputy Minister.
Thank you, House Chair. Greetings to the Minister of Basic Education, Minister Angie Motshekga, and other ministers that are present and deputy ministers, MECs for Education, Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee, and members, leadership in the basic education sector. Ladies and gentlemen, Sanbonan, we are meeting here today, Chair, to deliver the 2022-23 budget vote 16. As we do so, we are also watching the rising COVID-19 cases in our communities, which is a reminder to all of us that we are managing a massive public education system under conditions that are not of our own making. However, as a sector, we continue to commit ourselves to curriculum recovery and strengthening. One of the devastating and long-lasting impacts of COVID-19 over the past 2 years has been immeasurable learning losses that followed from intermittent disruption in schooling as well as rotational attendance. To this end, a learning recovery plan has been instituted, to which the implementation of recovery annual teaching plans, ATPs, in all subjects and grades have been central. The recovery ATPs have been in implementation since 2021 academic year and will continue through to 2024. A review plan for the recovery ATPs is being considered for 2022 to ensure that the trimming of the content focuses on the core and that it is also neatly aligned to assessment protocols. House Chair, the foundation phase maths recovery annual teaching plans were developed per term, and they clearly identify the skills, knowledge that learners need to master each quarter. These recovery ATPs also make reference to DBE learner workbooks, which every learner proudly has, with activities that highlight these skills and knowledge. The DBE workbooks allow for multiple and varied practice opportunities, which are key if we want to grow numerate learners. The Teaching Mathematics for Understanding TMU program, as well as the invaluable contributions from our international partners, are central pillars of the mathematic improvement interventions. In response to the targets for digitizing all state textbooks and high enrollment subject textbooks and workbooks for 2024, state-owned textbooks for grade 10 to 12 in business studies have been developed for print and also digitized in PDF, EPUB, and HTML file formats for online and offline access in partnership with Absa Bank. This brings the total number of developed and digitized state-owned textbooks for high enrollment subjects to 149. On the 6th of April 2020, Chair, the Minister of the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies published the Information and Communication Technology COVID-19 National State Disaster Regulations, wherein radio frequency spectrum was made available for licensing on a temporary basis. The purpose of the temporary spectrum assignment was to alleviate network challenges, ease congestion, and ensure good quality of service for consumers during COVID-19 pandemic. Based on the allocation of the temporary spectrum, the mobile network operators were mandated to provide schools with a virtual classroom solution. It is in this regard that the Department of Basic Education, the Independent Communication Authority of South Africa, ICASA, the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies and Mobile Networks provided 17 schools with information and communications technology, ICT, devices for grade 12 learners and teachers, data packages for access to online educational resources, as well as the broadcast solution. Furthermore, educators were trained on how to integrate the solution into teaching and learning. Honourable members, one way of growing the computer application technology, CATS, and information technology, IT, numbers is to entice the grade 8 and 9 learners at the school currently offering CATS and IT by exposing them to digital skills, including coding. The first phase of the project will mostly target grade 8 and 9 learners at schools currently offering CATS and IT. The main aim is to increase the number of learners opting for CATS and or IT at these schools by introducing learners to coding, computational thinking skills, and robotic, and attracting them to these subjects. For life sciences, 5 study guides for grade 12s were delivered to provincial education departments at the end of 2021. The content of the study guides cover is linked to the grade 12 life skills syllabus. For purpose of food security, agricultural studies textbooks for grade 8 and 9 were developed for use in pilot schools across the country. The curriculum and assessment policy statement for agricultural studies in grade 8 and 9 are to be fully implemented in 2023, and this forms part of the technical occupational cohort of subjects. House Chair, as outlined by the Minister today, implementation of the Presidential Youth Employment Initiative in schools has provided support to educators and learners. The youth ensured that teaching and learning occurred in conducive environment. Education assistance alleviated the administrative pressure from educators while ensuring that all learners were given support. Integrated ICT classrooms whereby computer labs were revived and are now fully utilized. Through the Reading Champions, school libraries have been rebooted, repacked, and are fully utilized. Library corners are established, and a culture of reading for meaning is inculcated in schools and communities. Whilst the main challenges experienced related to the delays in payment of stipends in some provinces, it is clear that this was a huge task, and many of the young people attest to the fact that they were paid timely and correct amounts as promised by government. Ladies and gentlemen, it is also important for the sector to report on the absorption of young teachers into the teaching profession. One of the interventions to the sector outcome, youth better prepared for further studies and the world of work beyond grade 9, is to ensure that through collaboration with universities and the Funza Lushaga Pesari scheme is to equip young teachers with the right skills to join the teaching profession. The department will continue to work towards the MTSF targets of placing 90% of Funza Lushaga Pesari holders within 6 months. The amount of 24.6 billion allocated for provincial education departments to address shortfalls in the compensation of teachers announced by the Minister of Finance will assist. However, the department will continue to work with the Cabinet, National Treasury and Provincial Treasuries to mobilize additional resources to increase the number of teaching posts in line with the increase in the number of learners. Teaching and learning, Honourable Chair, should take place in the environment that is conducive and safe. That is why we continue to prioritize infrastructure in the education sector. On the ASIDI program, we have completed and replaced a replacement of 302 schools, which initially were built with inappropriate materials. There are 30 remaining schools on the program planned for replacement in 2022-23 financial year. Similarly, we have served 1,218 schools with water supply. The remaining 54 schools on our city program will be served in the same cycle. With regard to sanitation at schools, we have served 1,037 schools that did not have toilets, with a complete new set of toilets under the ASIDI program. In addition, we have provided appropriate sanitation to 1,944 schools that were dependent on pit toilets. The remaining 16 schools on the ASIDI program will be served with a complete set of appropriate toilets in this financial year. Similarly, at the remaining 1,550 schools on the SAFE program, basic pit toilets will be replaced with a complete set of appropriate toilets. With regard to the utilization of allocated budgets, we are proud to announce that we have utilized 100% of the school infrastructure backlog grants and 99% of the education infrastructure grants. We are working with the presidency on the piloting of innovative approaches of the delivery of social infrastructure. We are also working with school governing bodies to address overcrowding in schools through community builders in a program that will see us reducing costs and strengthening our infrastructure data. House Chair, focusing our attention to the sector's response to social ills in our society that manifest themselves in our schools. Under school safety, the department rolled out a multi-departmental campaign on violence, bullying, prevention, including gender-based violence and femicide, drug abuse and substance abuse, to advocate for the prevention of bullying, substance abuse, corporal punishment, and sexual harassment in schools. 3 provinces were covered amidst the COVID-19 restrictions. That is Gauteng, Limpopo, and Mpumalanga. A multi-sectoral approach has been adopted by the department, which recognizes immensity of the challenges faced by all learners and educators in response to the threats posed by bullying and gender-based violence and femicide. The campaign is supported by other sister departments, so the Department of Health, Social Development, Home Affairs, Justice and Constitutional Development, Communications and Digital Technologies, as well as the South African Police Services. The campaign will be rolled out in the remaining 6 provinces, especially the hotspot districts, in the coming financial years. Under our social cohesion and equity, the persistent social ills that prevail in and around schools, communities, illustrate that values in education is the cornerstone of social cohesion and nation building in the basic education sector. In realizing priority 6 of the medium-term strategic framework on social cohesion and nation building, the department will continue to implement intervention programs that will assist in the eliminating of unfair discrimination and promote constitutional values. These include the National Schools Moot Court program that is implemented in partnership with the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development and the South African Human Rights Commission. We also intend to continue implementing the school democracy education program with the Independent Electoral Commission to inculcate civic education, active citizenry, and affirm the democratic right to vote among young people. We are making steady progress towards decolonization of education, using history and social sciences as a gateway subject to realize this goal. As such, the implementation of oral history will allow us to unearth and uncover the untold and undocumented history of unsung heroes and heroines of our country. The escalated levels of learner pregnancy among children younger than 14 years can only mean that those children affected by this phenomenon may have just been victims of sexual abuse and statutory rape. The department has set aside some modest funding in this vote to advocate efforts on prevention of management of sexual abuse and harassment in schools in response to the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide. The intended work will see provincial education departments focusing energies on rebooting the capacity of districts to respond and to address sexual violence in schools perpetrated against children. Over the past decade, the gender equity programming of the department has been synonymous with empowerment of adolescent girls and young women. Now, we realize that the support for adolescent boys and young men has become more urgent than before. Equally, we are charged with the responsibility to deliver an expansion gender equity programming that recognizes the need for social educational inclusion of diverse sexual orientations, gender identity, expression, and sex characteristics as guided by the Commission on Gender Equality. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Minister. The next speaker is the Honourable Kwankwa.
Chairperson, thank you very much. The United Democratic Movement does not support the budget vote. The reasons are as follows. It is simple that the department has for many years failed to secure a foundation of equal education for everyone in South Africa. Sorry, Chair, apologies. The reason why the videos offer always suffer from connectivity problems. My apologies, sir. As the committee pointed out, there is still a critical issue of a limited budget with low targets for special schools, including limited resources and devices available for them. This means learners with special needs still suffer from a lack of basic services that they require in order to get equal education. Another critical aspect is the infrastructure gap in the department, which denies equal learning opportunities to all learners. Yes, the education infrastructure grant has been allocated and reasonable amounts have been given to the department, but our main concern is the mismanagement of this grant within the department. You will recall, Chair, recently the Eastern Cape forfeited over 200 million infrastructure grant, million rands rather. Meanwhile, it has approximately more than 3,000 schools with inadequate sanitation, of which 1,445 schools are still using pit latrines. Not only that, there are 3,926 schools that do not have appropriate fencing and 634 schools that need a total of 9,464 schools built, classrooms rather, built or refurbished. This is sad given the fact that we are nearly 30 years into our democracy and that even when the budgets are made or resources are made available to address these problems, but resources aren't used for the manner in which they're intended. Furthermore, we are of the view that in provincial departments such as the Eastern Cape and in Limpopo, where issues such as bad infrastructure, wasteful spending, no scholar transport, and no textbooks for learners have been perennial problems, the national department should consider intervening very early in terms of Section 100 of the Constitution to address these violations and also remedy problems that seem to persist in order to protect the future of our children. There is a need to ensure that there is effective, transparent, and accountable leaders in the department, that leaders, especially accounting officers, are held to account for the failures of the department and the failures for provincial departments to be able to play their role. Chair, there is a disturbing video, obviously, and photos circulating as we speak here that apparently it seems like a group of gangsters shot at school children in Manenberg. It's issues that we need to attend to as the department and the leadership of the nation to try and make sure that the future of our children is not affected by criminals who would do anything in order to satisfy their criminal intentions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Sheikh Imam. The Honourable Sheikh Imam. If the Honourable Sheikh Imam is not available, then we'll proceed to the next speaker, who is the Honourable Siwela. The Honourable Siwela.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, Chairperson. The ANC support the budget vote. Honorable Chairperson, basic education is a critical driver of the social, economic, and political development of all nations. It is so because basic education focuses on children and the youth who constitute the future of our nation. When our education system produces good learning outcomes and prepare the youth for the social, political, and economic challenges which confront our nation, we become relatively certain that indeed the future of our nation will be better than what it was in the past and today. It is in our basic education system where the future leaders, future professionals, and the future base of the nation's human capabilities lay. It is for this reason that the largest budget allocation by the ANC government is on basic education. As a nation which had been plagued by colonialism and apartheid, we have to overcome the structural exclusion of the majority of Black South Africans and women. The budget allocated to the department should be able to respond to the multiple inequalities which exist in our education system in order to empower all learners with the resources and support required to have equal opportunities. With high levels of unemployment and widening inequality, the department has the duty to provide various services which enable learners to have a conducive learning environment to succeed. The special legacy of unequal development in rural and urban areas and skewed distribution of resources and development in the country has resulted in numerous basic services being inadequate in some of our schools, which negatively affects the environment of learning. One of the major challenges influencing the department is the fact that some basic services are not the mandate of the department. In this regard, the department should ensure that through the district developmental model, planning and budgeting with other departments and municipalities should enable a coherent intervention by a government to ensure all basic services provided are part of the plans of various departments. The department is closing these inequalities, and to improve conditions of learners will continue ensuring that provinces provide learner scholar transport. Scholar transport eases a strain for learners who would have to walk many kilometers to get to their schools due to the vast disposition of households and the location of schools, particularly in rural and farm areas. Without this service, many learners will struggle to perform to the best of their abilities due to the fatigue of traveling. This intervention, honourable members, also contribute in protecting the learners who will be in risky conditions if they had to walk long distances. With the rise in gender-based violence and femicide and other social ills which target learners, this intervention does enhance the protection of children. It is of concern that we have been experiencing an increase of teenage pregnancy. The department should heighten its effort and campaigns to ensure awareness and understanding from our learners so that they take correct decisions to protect their life aspirations. Honourable members, food security in our country remains a challenge. According to the report released by Statistics South Africa, measuring food security in South Africa, applying the food insecurity experience scale, almost 23.6% of South Africans in 2020 were affected by moderate to severe food insecurity, while almost 14.9% experienced severe food insecurity. Among those percentages is faces of children and the youth. A hungry stomach cannot enable optimal learning, and without any compromise, it is imperative that the department continues to provide nutritional meals in our schools. For the current year, the department has targeted 19,950 schools, a target of 9 million learners in each year to provide nutritional meals on each school day. In this budget, the total school nutrition program grant has been allocated 8.5 billion rands to ensure no learner has to endure an empty stomach. Honourable members, this is what providing a safety net is all about. It is about ensuring that no one is left behind, and our government has put in place the most progressive interventions to mitigate against the impact of poverty and inequality. Honourable members, infrastructure development is a major concern of the department, as numerous schools lack the adequate facilities to enable conducive teaching and learning. In our various oversight visits, we have observed a tremendous progress made in various provinces, but the backlog in other areas remains. The department in this budget, through the Education Infrastructure Grant, will be building 30 schools to replace unsafe structures, provide water to 50 schools, and provide sanitation to 450 schools. This is not going to address the infrastructure backlog, but it will improve conditions in the specific school. This is part of progress. Honourable members, welcome the announcement by His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa in his State of the Nation address when he said, government is introducing an innovative social infrastructure delivery mechanism to address issues that afflict the delivery of school infrastructure. The mechanism will address the speed, financing, and funding, quality of delivery, mass employment, and maintenance. The new delivery mechanism will introduce a special purpose vehicle working with prominent development finance institutions and the private sector, which is being piloted in schools in the Northern Cape and the Eastern Cape. Crowding in private schools to respond to critical social issues is a commendable approach, as our financial system should also be responsive to social needs and not only oriented to profit making. This is the level of priority government has placed to supplement efforts by the department and to move closer to eradicating the infrastructure backlog in our system. We make a call to parents, communities, civil society, and religious organizations to take keen interest in the education of our children and to monitor the quality of schooling in our communities. Some of the challenges affecting our schools, such as theft and vandalism, can be avoided when our communities work with the police and school governing bodies to embed a social culture which treasures and protects schools as sites of development. Schools with an appropriate community support in collaboration with education stakeholders function better. The African National Congress supports the budget of basic education, and we urge the department to ensure that the distribution of expenditure contributes to economic reconstruction and recovery, and make sure it supports small and medium-sized business and businesses owned by youth and women to stimulate their growth. This budget is critical in our endeavor of creating a united, equitable, and prosperous South Africa where all have equal opportunities to opportunities to realize their potential and defy the odds imposed by inequality. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I will now call again on the Honourable Shenki Mam.
Thank you, Chairperson. I have more than just load shedding. I have a total blackout, so pardon me. The National Freedom Party notes the report on Budget Vote 16 Basic Education tabled here today. Now, Chairperson, let me start off by saying that 1 out of every 2 children that start school do not finish school at grade 12. Secondly, 60% of those that go from basic education to higher education drop out in the first year of education. I have just come from a school called Viking Gozi in Iteguini in Durban, on the outskirts. Chairperson, each class has 80 children in 1 class. Now tell me, could we call this equal education? Certainly not. And that is why many experts are saying that in South Africa, the emphasis is on quantity, not on quality. And that is why they say we have a very broken or unequal education system, which is flawed with poor performance. And that's where we have a problem with very little or no accountability. Over and above that, the problem is that the teachers or educators do not get enough support. Many of these children are coming from dysfunctional families, and there is a lot of pressure that's being put on educators who have to be the fathers, the mothers, and the educators of these children. Now, over and above that, experts and research have established that lack of water, electricity, technology in these schools, poor and failing infrastructure gives rise to the poor quality of education that we have in South Africa. Not forgetting the water and sanitation, which many schools currently still have pit toilets. So I think the time has come, Honourable Chairperson, that we need to take stock of our basic education department, what we need to enhance the quality of education so that we could produce better learners that will go to higher education level. Until we do that, a lot of money is being wasted on basic education, and it appears that we do not have the necessary capacity to be able to provide quality education. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Hendricks.
Thank you very much, Honourable House Chair. Honourable House Chair, at 4 o'clock this afternoon, the sounds of bullets were sent to me of shootings at Downville Primary School in Menenberg. Children were running for their lives. Bullets hit the desk in a grade 2 classroom. I was sent pictures of learners lying under their school benches. Learners were traumatized, just like I'm traumatized at the moment. How are the learners getting home was one of the many questions I got that I want to share with honourable members. Minister, the buck stops with you to see that 8-year-olds are safe at schools. Otherwise, your department will go down in history as a failed department. Minister, you cannot depend on the official opposition party in the Western Cape who's governing. They are more interested in Ukraine. You won't find them in Menenberg, but you will find them in Ukraine. They are hell-bent on destroying the education of African and coloured learners. They do this by firing the best school principals that is the closest to our communities and those most loved by our learners, and those turning schools around for the better. The latest being Wesley Newman of Heathfield High. I don't want to go into the merits of the case, but the penalty was too severe. The DA demoted the principal and transferred the beloved principal of Heathfield High School. These children are traumatized just like those are under fire at the moment. I hope the army is sending out the helicopter. I saw them at the castle crying out to politicians of the EFF, the ANC, Good and Al-Jamaa for help. All these parties support the students of Heathfield High School after they put their case. But House Chair, what is Parliament going to do for the learners of Danville Primary School in Manenberg? What is the Speaker going to do? What is the Leader of Parliament going to do? What are the councillors of the President, deputies that are going to do? I can only depend on our Chief Whip, and I see she's already making a full call. I see no calls being made by the official opposition. The lives of learners at Danville Primary School does matter. The Fourth Estate has gone home and are having the sundowner now. They don't care about the learners at Danville Primary School, but I hope they will report on it. Honourable House Chair, I've got to end now. I am very traumatized. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Honourable Hendricks. The next speaker is the Honourable van der Walt.
Good evening, Chairperson and colleagues. Can you hear me, Chair?
I can hear you, Honourable Member. And what I suggest you do is, if it's possible, just to switch off your microphone. Not your microphone, your video.
Video is off.
Yes, you may continue, Honourable Member.
Thank you. Die DA verwerp die voortgesette diskriminasie teen die inheemse tale van ons land. Advertensies wat belanghebbendes uitnooi om skriftelik kommentaar op die Bella wysigingswetsontwerp in te dien, is bedoel om aan alle taalgroepe 'n gelyke geleentheid te bied. Behalwe vir die advertensie in Engels wat reeds op 15 Mei in 'n nasionale koerant verskyn het, sal al die ander tale slegs in streeks of gemeenskapskoerante gepubliseer word. Boonop sal 9 van ons 11 amptelike tale se gebruikers nie die volle 30 dae periode gegee word nie, met die Afrikaanssprekende gemeenskap wat die minste tyd gegee word. Minister, we are fully aware of different competencies between your department and the provincial departments, but accept that you are the custodian of basic education. We often would want you to intervene by using the remedies available to you. Surely your cabinet meetings are one of such remedies where you can raise matters with the president who has appointed you. We have welcomed the transfer of early childhood development sector into the basic education department, being formally part, Chair.
Honourable Hendricks, your microphone must be muted. We can hear you and it's disrupting the proceedings. Please mute yourself. Continue, Honourable van der Walt.
Thank you. Being formally part of the foundation phase should improve academic results throughout the child's education. Of course, it needs urgent focus on getting it right from the start. The Early Childhood 2021 census released last week emphasized our earlier concerns raised with the Minister and in the Portfolio Committee that significant financial support, resources and training is non-negotiable to success. The current financial year's allocation is already on a red alert. Municipalities who are failing to deliver services cannot be trusted to be in charge of the infrastructure of ECDs in their areas. That is a call for sure massive failure. The Western Cape Education Department's mantra of, and I quote, enter to learn, leave to serve, close quote, carries a deep meaning that every child should be in school for the sole purpose of learning. It also emphasizes that every child has potential and must be developed to become an active citizen of South Africa. But it seems like the children in the special needs and Elson school sector are often treated, and I quote, like second-hand citizens, close quote. Why do I say this? Please conduct unannounced oversight visits. See for yourselves. Listen to the learners, the teachers, the parents, and the SGB members. A reply to my parliamentary question on whether there is an allocation to public special needs schools and how are learners of such schools funded revealed that, and I quote, DBE does not have a policy relating to the funding of special schools. The draft policy was not approved due to budget constraints, close quote. It also revealed that the equitable share formula for basic education is based on the age cohort 5 to 17 for school-going age and not 7 to 15. There is no earmarked or specific funding for learners above 17 years. The same allocation for the age cohort 5 to 17 is extended to the learners above 17 years. This, of course, needs urgent attention. We have to change the sector and ensure they benefit from quality education without discrimination as per the SA Schools Act and an understanding of human rights. If the Funza Lusaka bursary scheme is to address critical educator shortages in specified subject areas, it should include providing bursaries to prospective teachers in sign language and braille writing for our hearing and visually impaired learners. This sector can no longer be left behind with outdated equipment. Technology has advanced and way beyond the outdated braille machines. Modern equipment is available and should be provided to these learners and teachers. Now more than ever, it is necessary for you to think how your department is going to resolve the growing need for therapists at school. COVID-19 pandemic has left many scars and fears on learners and educators. Substance abuse, teenage pregnancies, violence on school premises or outings, statutory rape, sexual abuse on school premises, etc., is on the rise. Yet there are no experts to assist. We need to have an urgent discussion with the Minister of Health, as I have previously requested. We have proposed the placement of healthcare students like occupational therapists, psychologists, nurses, speech therapists, etc., who must do their community serve years at schools. Both the schools and students across the country can benefit from such a project. I conclude, Minister and colleagues, with an invitation to you, Minister, and your colleague, the Minister of Finance, to visit special needs and Elson schools with me during June, which is Youth Month, in order to see the real need. Maybe that would assist in a better budget. We must look after every learner to ensure their futures and allow them to one day leave school to serve their communities and our country. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Morula Chehla.
Minister of Basic Education, Mama Incremental. Deputy Minister, Me Makhaburi Jaina, Mahaule, and colleagues in the Portfolio Committee on Basic Education, all friends and honorable members, dear little ladies. The African National Congress vehemently supports this budget vote number 16. As chairperson, as members of parliament, we have been given the honor and responsibility to represent our people and their aspirations. Our people have entrusted to all of us as members of this august house because they have full confidence and trust that through parliament, we will be able to tribune, the people will be able at all times and meaningfully contribute to the building of our nation. In the context of the budget vote number 16, and on the education, our efforts and contributions should be informed by efforts of strengthening our basic education system than a simplistic critic of the known without providing any alternative and solution to the problems we are faced with. As my learned friends from both DA and EFF would normally do, the minister, in her address, has outlined the interventions and progress which has been recorded by the government, and she also engulfed very serious programs on the way forward as far as that is concerned. The coronavirus pandemic has demonstrated the significance of both mathematics and science as subjects to be taught in our schools. And the World Health Organization has applauded South African government for placing science and mathematics as the pillars of COVID-19 responses. Honourable members and House Chairperson, this signifies this important role that both science and mathematics are playing in our education system. And as the African National Congress, we are concerned by the percentage decline of learners who keeps on deregistering in the line of maths and science, despite, of course, the increase in the number of students that are taking those subjects. We urge the Department of Basic Education and the National Strategy for Maths and Science and Technological Education, as they adhere to the goal of 2021 up to 2030, as it is strengthening the learning outcomes of our learners. It is, of course, very critical, Chairperson, that as a department, they've got a role in making it a point that both registration and the teaching and learning of math and science are prioritized at all material time. As Chairperson, one other aspect which is of very importance is the aspect of reading. And this is an important priority which the department should continuously strengthen. The Department of Basic Education should enhance working with the Department of Arts and Culture to expand on this principle of reading and learning. We welcome efforts as made by the South African Council for Educators in making it a point that teachers are professionally encouraged and equipped in order to face the ongoing challenges on the learning of our children. Honorable members, globally, educationists have proven that mother tongue education improves the learning outcomes, particularly in early grades. As a nation, we need to encourage our learners on the indigenous learning so that our mother tongue are taken for serious. And as the ANC, we are encouraged by the increase in the doctoral training levels, whereby the undertaking is used in as far as indigenous language are concerned. This is a clear demonstration that all official languages can be developed for educational purposes. We encourage the Department of Basic Education to strengthen the relationship with higher education institutions in order to focus on the development of the indigenous languages for learning purposes.
Honourable Murachela, my apologies. May I ask the Honourable Hicklin to switch? Honourable Hicklin. Continue, Honourable Member. Honourable Murachela, unmute yourself, and then you continue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson. Learners who speak English at home, it has been proven that they are able to perform well when it comes to math and science teaching. We welcome the pilot project that has been initiated in the Eastern Cape on the whole issue of mother tongue instruction. And our wish, Chairperson, is that where possible, this pilot project must be expanded to the national level. I must also, House Chairperson, talk on the principle, the issue of Funza Lushaka, that it is one such important initiative by the current Department of Basic Education and our government to make it a point that we are able to encourage younger educators to pursue the rare skills subjects like maths and physical science by offering them this all-important bursary. There is an allocated amount of 1.32 billion to the National Student Finance Aid Scheme in order to address this. In order to strengthen the education system, continued professional development is encouraged at the level of the South African Council for Educators. And it is for this reason that, Chairperson, the ANC-led government makes the point that through the SACE as an entity, that all educators who are found short by getting involved in sexual relationship with learners must be brought to book. And for this reason, we want to commend SACE for coming to the party. Honorable Chairperson and honorable members, gender-based violence keeps on rearing its ugly head in our schools. And we come, as the department has initiated, totally against all form of gangsterism, all form of bullying that end up affecting negatively our schools' performances. And we therefore would love to commend the department for playing ball in as far as this is concerned. Without working, of course, with communities in our schools, we are likely to encounter a number of challenges. And it is for this reason that from the SAY's point of view, we would love to encourage all schools through the QLPT quality of learning and teaching campaigns to make it a point that all this misdemeanor happening within our schools are completely discouraged. Once again, Chairperson, allow me to rise and indicate that as the African National Congress, we support this budget vote unequivocally so. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I now call upon the Honourable Minister of Basic Education to respond to the debate. The Honourable Minister.
No, thank you very much, Chair. And let me take this opportunity to really thank the members who have responded to the input. We appreciate their responses, their guidance, but I also want to thank Naboma Kalanjalo, Dilalan, Siabong, Mkhaleni Kalanjalo. Chair, I also want to really say, the decision by this sixth administration to insist that social development and education should work together to form a coherent, integrated, quality childhood education. We are going as a country going to earn all the dividends that come from early childhood development. The study that we've conducted on Thrive by 5 indicate that 35% of our children, only 35% are ready for schooling and are ready to thrive in their careers for life. A whopping 49%, if no interventions happen, are really at risk. And worse still, it says 16% are even at the worst risk. And the UN issued a report, a tracer study, which was indicating that children at 22 months, if nothing happens, at 22 years, they'll be in the same position. So if indeed, as a country, we want to change the fortunes of our country, this is an area where we have to work together and ensure that indeed we make the necessary interventions. I really appreciate, Chair, the insistence that always comes from Member Soekers, Member van der Walt, and also Member Hendricks around issues of children with special needs, but also around violence. Because indeed, as a country and as adults, we have to make sure that no child is left behind, and we do all we can to support children with special needs, but we also work hard to deal with violence in our country. Member Hendricks, I really sympathize with you because the violence in our country is very disheartening, it's very depressing, and indeed agree with you that something has to give. The other matter, Chair, which I want to highlight is a question of language, of teaching and learning. Chair, in terms of our demographics in the country, more than 80% of children learn in a language other than theirs. And I think the sector, and that's what we are already beginning to do work, that we have to make sure that all learners are given the opportunity, they are able to choose to learn in the language of their choice, and in particular in the mother tongue. Eastern Cape has done a very good study. It's very encouraging, it's clarifying most of the questions that adults will have, and other provinces are following. And I'm saying it's an area that we have to pay attention if we have to make sure that we don't continue the discrimination, the prejudice that the majority of learners are experiencing because they are forced to learn in a language that other than their mother tongue. Chair, member also mentioned that we're taken to court for wearing of masks. I don't know of that case. I know that the decision to end rotational teaching came through a cabinet decision which came as an advisory from health. Then the fact that we're in court, we're told to end the rotational teaching, yes, but maybe to say to the member, let's tell no lies and claim easy victories. There's nothing like that. We're never taken to court. We took the decision ourselves. And I think what we will do, Chair, we will publish the full statement on our website, where we also then indicate that, for instance, as I said in the speech, that 35 occupational and vocationally orientated subjects have already been gazetted. We're looking at focus schools, but perhaps because of the pressure, we couldn't explain all the matters. At the end of today, tomorrow, you will get a full statement. And Chair, I really want to say, I understand sometimes, member Kwangwa, no Shaki mem, and it mahamba yetu. So they have no people to discuss. So they repeat the same thing, the same lamentations. And one has to accept it. You don't have any personal fatula. But I really want to thank ANC members for engaging with what is there. Because sometimes, what is sometimes a difficulty, we always talk about something that is not on the table and that is not being discussed. But I also want to thank a member of the IFP. Quite clearly, he's read the statement and is responding to the statement. As such, his input and his guidance is very helpful, because members may not know. We appreciate your guidance, we appreciate your views, but some of you can even write your speech, but I will know what you are going to say, because but Chair, I really want to thank yourself, thank the committee, thank the chairperson of the committee, also thank the ruling party, because they have read the statement, they are responding to the statement. Every day, and I really have my sympathies. I'm sure it's not easy.
Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank everybody.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable members, this brings the proceedings of this mini plenary to an end, and the mini plenary will now rise. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members.